You may have heard a lot about nervous system regulation and its role in helping you prevent emotional and behavioral chaos while also helping you find inner peace. You may even have tried some tools to reduce stress and create more internal calm, but didn't find much lasting relief. In truth, it can take a lot of practice and effort to rewire our bodies and brains in lasting ways, especially when negative patterns have been in play for years or even decades. Yet, because dysregulation is at the root of many issues, from mood disorders to chronic anxiety, any changes we make for the better can also benefit our partners, children, and families. So today, we're joined by a leading expert who will guide us on the path of lasting change and healing. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real-life question. I hope you can help me with this. My son is 7 and totally ADHD already. Plus, he's really anxious. I feel stupid because I only just realized that he's so much like his dad in these ways. I don't want to shame or blame my husband or put him on the spot. So I wonder if my son is naturally anxious and inattentive, or if he's learned this from his dad. And I also want to know if you have any tips that can help me with my son and maybe even my husband. Thanks. And with that issue as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manley, and this is Imperfect Love.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manley, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are imperfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Please note, as this episode may contain sensitive information, listener discretion is advised. If you'd like further information, please see the links in the show notes. Today, I am joined by a top-notch expert, Dr. Roseann Capanna-Hodge. Dr. Roseann is a leading expert in emotional and behavioral dysregulation. She is also the creator of Calm's Dysregulation Protocol and Regulation First Parenting. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Roseann. It's such a joy to have you with us today.
Well, I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm really excited for this conversation. I love the question already that your listener gave us.
I am so grateful that we have such wonderful questions to help listeners who might feel alone or as though they're broken, and realize that so many of these issues are something that we deal with every day, and we might see them in our own lives. So talking about them helps us understand ourselves, our kids if we have them, our partners, and life in general. So thank you for joining us on this really important issue. Now, before we launch into this wonderful topic, can you tell our listeners just a little bit about what makes you, you?
Yeah, well, there's so many things that make me me, but I would say I am a intuitive extrovert, and I am also an Aquarian. If anybody's an Aquarian, I am such an Aquarian, but I receive a lot of guidance from above, and I'm very much. You don't know my mother, Philomena. She's with Jesus now. But she's a big part of my book, The Dysregulated Kid, but I'm also very much my mother's daughter. And, I'm somebody who is very empathetic and feels things very strongly, but I'm also just a straight shooter. And I'm very curious. That's the Aquarian in me. So, for 3 decades, I'm no longer clinically practicing, but for 3 decades, I've helped thousands of people. And I never believed that somebody couldn't get better. And so that drove all of this work that I do. I'm just never going to take that answer that, no, you can't get better. That's just bologna and cheese. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much. What a lovely, lovely introduction. I could I have so many questions already, but I first love that you said that nobody cannot get better. And I am a firm believer that even when I'm working with, that the people on the narcissistic spectrum, which is notoriously a really difficult population to deal with, if there is a desire to get better,
That's
we
right.
can really push through in mental health issues. If there's the desire, the willingness, the commitment, then we might not ever be 100%. I don't know anybody who's 100% perfect, but might not ever be 100%, but we can really make a lot of progress to where
Yeah.
we don't recognize the person that we once were. And so thank you for that.
I always tell everybody that I just need 1% belief. And, because we think you have to be 100% in. And that's just not the way the brain works, that you just need a little opening. And then that can be the kindling to make the change. And change is steps. It's not a magic wand or a magic pill. And that's the harder part. But yes, it is not. Now, people have, over these 3 decades, people came from all over the world to see me because I worked with kids who were really struggling in very complex cases. But where I live is outside of New York City in Connecticut. And there are a lot of narcissists where I live here because this is the finance capital of the world. So God bless you. And I had to deal with it in a parenting situation. And most parents don't see their kids the same, and it becomes really harder when one person isn't seeing things from the other side, right? And
Mhm.
so working with them to help to see the other person's side, and then, of course, to understand their kid's behavior, that it was happening from a nervous system perspective, was great because people like science, and then they like to know the path. And that's something I've been doing for a long time. So if you're struggling and you're like, "Well, I'm not even 50% in." You only need 1%, and then you need a little action behind it, right, Dr. Carla Marie?
So true, because a couple of things that you said already, I mean, you've said so many amazing things, but when we want change, we live in a quick fix society.
Mhm,
We wanna take a pill and have our lives change. We wanna buy something and have our lives change. But true self-work, and I can say this from my own perspective, from my own life, it takes a heck of a lot of work,
mhm.
a lot of perseverance because we are wired to stay the same unless we give it this concerted, mindful effort. And it isn't overnight. You change, you change, you change. Sometimes you'll notice it. Sometimes you'll have this epiphany like, wow. And so we want to lean into that and say, wow, good job. You're on the right path. But we forget often that this kind of work, much like growing a garden, you've got to be out there. You've got to be watering. You've got to be feeding. You've got to be pulling the weeds. And if you make it a journey of love, rather than a journey of, I have to change. Well, no, it's like, do you want to change? Do you want to find that inner calm more often than not? Do you want to make it more accessible and not blame yourself for the days where it's a little more elusive, a little more out of reach? And what you're talking about astrological signs. One of my sisters, precious soul, she's passed, but unexpectedly, but she was an Aquarius and she was, I don't know about you, but she was so curious, so
Mhm,
driven, so excitement oriented and
mhm.
full of life. And me, I'm a Sag. I'm truthful. I'm honest. I need to be on the move. I'm about as rooted, as I can get in many ways, but in some ways I'm more like this horse slash butterfly. So but the nice thing about a Sag is you always know where you stand. There's
Yeah.
not going to be much
Well,
manipulation.
Sages and Aquarians are good friends because we have a real sense Aquarians have a sense of justice. We like that. We're also good friends, and so are Sagittariuses. So we're just a little we're a little harder, right? We'll cut you right off an Aquarian if you're not our people. Like we need to be loved and accepted for who we are and not changed. And so, like, when I think about the people that I have in my inner circle, they all just love and accept me for who I am, and they're also super loyal, and they like to have fun.
And I'm with you on that regardless of our signs,
Yeah.
that having people who get
Mm,
us, who love us, who accept us, not put up with our crap if we're being awful. We want friends who can call us on our
absolutely.
stuff. But also that I love that piece that you said about justice because so many times I know a need for justice is I was working with a client on this just the other day where she has this deep drive for justice. And I think that that's important for us to notice those qualities, whatever our sign is, or even if we don't believe in signs,
Yeah.
noticing the qualities in you, your priorities, your values, and wanting justice and these are things I think, going back to the question of the day, that can help us create inner calm.
Yes.
Because when
Oh, absolutely, because
totally.
if we're with people where we don't have a values alignment, it creates a dysregulation. It becomes very, very hard. And, you talked about an evolutionary process, like with the clients that you work with, the clients I work with. And I always like to tell them I'm highly integrative. I do a lot of functional things, always have since the early 1990s. And so as you move in whatever lane you're moving into, but you're in a place of change, of awakening, your garden, I love that analogy, people around you can shift. And that's not a bad thing. You just have to realize it could create a weird feeling in your nervous system. But as you change, the people that are believe in you and support you will change with you. And sometimes there are seasons to relationships and friendships too. And it doesn't have to be an awful feeling. I think we don't talk about that enough. As you grow, sometimes people don't want to grow with you.
Thank you, and I think that is a really hugely important piece. I talk about that very thing, and listeners, this is so important because as you change, you might feel a push from other people in your life to get back into being the same old you. And I use the image of a lovely mobile above a baby's crib with little birds on it. And that little mobile is static, it's staying in one place. But the minute you pull at one of those birds, it's gonna start the whole little mobile moving. And so as you change, you are that little bird that moved, and everybody else is gonna say, "Whoa, this person's not behaving the way they used to. Our little family, our system, our clique, whatever it is not regulated anymore." So they're gonna try and pull you back into that old pattern, which may be very dysfunctional. And so
Absolutely.
realizing that you have the right, sometimes I say even the responsibility, to shake things up so that you're more aligned with yourself. And if this creates a little bit of dysregulation of that sort, that's healthy dysregulation. What do you think of that, Doctor?
Oh, I think that, with growth comes uncomfortableness. And, so much of my work is about regulation first, right? And all regulation first is that all these strategies and tools or learning and all treatments, whatever you're doing to better yourself, those things can't work at all or don't work as well as they could until your nervous system is regulating, right? And so when we're doing therapy, so I do a lot of times or in the past, well, all of my work has been you got to regulate in some way, shape, or form. I do a lot of PEMF, and that's pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, and it regulates the nervous system. But that's just a fancy way to do it. There's all kinds of ways, breath work, prayer, all kinds of stuff that are free. And we could talk about that. But you've got to spend time doing proactive things to regulate yourself so that when you're stretching yourself, when you're growing in therapy, as you get uncomfortable, your nervous system can say, "Oh, I'm uncomfortable, but I know how to be relaxed," which is in the autonomic nervous system, which manages your stress, is the parasympathetic state. So you get a little uncomfortable when you're doing something new, right? You're learning something, you're decided literally to go on a roller coaster or whatever. You're getting married, somebody said something awful to you, all these different points in life. but your nervous system knows how to go back. But what's happening is we're moving into a constant state of dysregulation, and that is impacting how people are moving through the world. We're moving to a dysregulation crisis, not just kids, adults, parents, and it's hard. It's hard, and even the question was from a parent who has a child with ADHD, and she's now seeing that her husband has it. And so to have this conversation, she's not sure how to make it, and this is where I spend so much time working with parents, and about 80% of the time, they're not in agreement with their child's issue or how to address it, which is really hard. And so when I meet couples that are like, "Yeah, oh, we agree," and I'm like, "Can we just honor that for a minute? Because that is, like,
Mhm.
not typical." But what I do so much is helping them to see the other side and helping them to say, like, "This is what it is." And so what I always do is lead with science. What is the brain? What is the nervous system showing us, right? Great example, or the case of this 7-year-old, right? So how is she gonna talk to her husband about her kid's ADHD? She's afraid of making him feel bad. So, you know, first of all, it might be a relief to your husband to say, "Have you ever thought you had ADD because of this, this, and this? And here's some things that people with ADHD are really good at. And you do those things. You're so good at hyper focusing, or you learn by doing," right? Because most people with neurodivergence, they learn through what we call kinesthetic learning. So start with what's good. And then be like, "And when it's boring, you have a hard time focusing." But this isn't uncommon for parents to realize they're dyslexic or autistic or ADHD, something in the neurodivergent realm, or even that they have a clinical mental health issue they've been at a much more functional level. But it starts with a conversation without anger, and really saying, "Hey, listen, we have Joey here, and he's 7, and the teacher's already coming to me with concerns, and I see them. I don't disagree. Let's get an action plan together. And, I found this provider to talk to, or we're going to have a school meeting and let's listen." But she's probably concerned that her husband's going to feel like, "Hey, he's fine. We don't need to do anything." That's probably what's driving that concern.
Thank you. You've said so many important pieces. And I appreciate how you said, as part of the conversation, that when we talk with someone, whether it's our partner or someone else, finding those positives of something like ADHD, where it's not a label to blame you or shame you. It's just, hey, there are these pieces that are really positive, and maybe there are some that work against you or work against our child, and helping the person see that it's about, even if we focus on the child at first and then later help the the husband or the adult in the situation, but realizing that so many of these patterns, and I'd like your input on this, Dr. Roseann, I believe are intergenerationally transmitted, not
100%.
because we want our kid or our parents wanted us to be dysregulated. But if you're coming a lot of times, a lot as and so I'm going to ask you for your opinion on two things. A lot of this can come from trauma, from childhood environments that have kids walking on eggshells, that have kids in a chronic state of dysregulation, fear. So, of course, the kid's going to grow up that way unless they get serious treatment. They're going to pass it on, not intentionally, but to their kiddos. Their kiddos are going to pass it on to their kiddos. And what do you think about both of those pieces in your work?
Yeah, I could not agree more with you. And in fact, I'm doing a TED Talk on this very topic in September called, and I've coined a term, trademark a term called generational emotional wealth. And so in mental health, because you're a practitioner, our how we diagnose people is very much influenced by pharma and medications. And so it sends this message that everything you pass on is genetic. But what we're saying is something different. It's actually you're inheriting behaviors. And so when you're at home and, trauma, just to understand what trauma really is, because we always think of the big T's, the big traumas.
Mhm.
And we're not thinking of all the little ways trauma shows up. To have a narcissistic mother, right? And how is that? What does that mean? To have had medical trauma, to have different ways. And we don't decide what's trauma. Your body decides what's trauma, and it gets held differently. You can have 5 people experience the same thing and have completely different reactions. Some of that, as a provider for Sandy Hook and 9/11, what people brought to the table, what they came in with, affect determined how they were going to deal with these very big traumas. So I want people to know that just because you weren't, beaten or sexually abused or, had a horrific accident, your trauma is valid, because a lot of people think, I had these things and so what? They're not understanding the trauma connection. And trauma affects us in ways. It is definitely something that can be addressed when we regulate our nervous system and we do trauma informed therapy. I've seen incredible transformations with people, so never lose hope. But when we think, oh, well, this is all genetic, anxiety, genetic, depression, genetic, sometimes it is. But more what I see is these behaviors, these ways of doing things. Like I said, I'm daughter of Philomena. I learned a lot of ways of doing things from her, right? So I am like a 5-star chef. Like I learned it from her, right? And just ways in doing things. So think about the number one way we learn to parent is actually from our parents. So good and bad, right? I always talk about Tony and Philomena. Those are my parents. I learned a lot of good things. I also learned some bad things, like they favored their male child because that was cultural. And that really did a number on us as kids and really wasn't healthy and divided us. So we inherit behaviors and trauma does affect us. It does not determine us. And we have the power. Calm can change your DNA. Calm can break the cycle. But if you don't stop and say, I'm not going to let this trauma, I'm not going to let these ways of behaviors pass on, it will pass on. And I think you and I both see that, right? Yeah.
100%. And again, listeners, this isn't blaming you. You might be pausing and going, oh my God, I've passed this on to my kids. I've
No.
passed this on to my grandkids. That's not the message here. Or you may hate your parents or be really stuck in resenting your parents for passing on something to you. They likely didn't do it intentionally. They likely did what they knew to do, which is what most of us do. Most of us pass things on, eating behaviors, shopping behaviors,
But
parenting
also good
behaviors.
behaviors like being really friendly and
Yes.
looking out for your elderly neighbor and all those things. But you're right. Like this is when we know better, we can do better. So hearing this shouldn't, yes, you might have an aha moment, but so now you know. When you know, we can do things differently.
Mhm.
Never shame. It's a point of understanding. And your people are listening because they want better for themselves.
And that's the key piece. The
Yeah.
wanting better, to me, is the key to mental health, because the minute we wake up and go, I want a better life. I want better for myself, for this listener. She reached out and is basically saying, I want more. I want more for my kiddo. I want more for my husband. I've had this epiphany that I now see it. And that's fabulous. I get so excited when somebody reaches out, because reaching out for support is one of the wisest, most courageous things we can ever do. Being stuck in dysfunction is just that. We're going to be stuck. So I have a question before we move on. Could you say more about the term you coined? Was it intergenerational
No, it's generational emotional wealth. So,
wealth, with a
yeah, so
capital wealth?
we're leaving people the wrong things. We need to leave people a regulated nervous system. And, all of my work teaches people how to do that very easily and in such a doable way. It doesn't matter if you have a trauma history, it doesn't matter if you perceive yourself as, not good at these things or a bad parent or whatever you want to say to yourself. It's as easy could be, and I took what worked in those 3 decades with thousands of people. And I simplified it and I made it everything is free and accessible. And, we have to focus on teaching everybody to regulate because we're choking on overwhelm. We're choking on dysregulation. And we can change that.
Absolutely. And as we look at this listener's question and how to, in my practice, I get so many questions like, well, I tried the breathing, Dr. Carla. The breathing didn't work. I tried the meditation. The meditation didn't work. I did EMDR with another therapist. The EMDR didn't work.
Mhm.
And when we realize that this is about, and I'm going to turn this back to you, this isn't about trying one thing. This is about trying, finding what works, and then continuing the practice daily until you're rewiring yourself to find inner calm. And I can say for myself, having had significant trauma in my life, that this where I am now, people say, "Oh my gosh, you're so calm and so peaceful." And yeah, I don't give my background, but I'm like, yes, yes. And then I think to myself, that's a lot of therapy behind that. That's a
Yeah.
lot of self-work behind that. That
A
is
lot of work. It's an inside job, right? And, in my comms protocol, right, the S is support and reinforce. I think the part, and I'm the same as you, people come to me and I say, I tried this supplement. I tried this. There's so many things, that are behind it. But the first thing is, did you do it enough? Did you do it at a high level? I wanna hear you saying you did it every day, 3 times a day for 30 days. And when I mean that, I mean, are you doing breath work? Are you doing one of the somatic practices like a heart hug? Like, you don't like breath work because you have a trauma background? Don't worry about it. I got other things. Are you getting up and praying every morning? What are you doing to force your nervous system to regulate, okay? You can't say the people will say, "Well, yeah, I did it. I did it for like a week. It didn't work." It's like, and also recognizing the micro. So we have an all or nothing mentality in the sense that if I didn't get to the summit, it's a failure. You have to go to the base camps on Mount Everest, okay, peeps? So what changed? Was it intensity, frequency, duration? Seeing success not only is important for you to recognize it, it's your subconscious, it's your nervous system that needs to recognize it. Because I don't think people realize, like, your subconscious is actually running the show 95 to 99.5% of the time. So when you teach the nervous system in the brain, you teach it, "Hey, I'm doing okay, I'm doing okay." It says, "Oh, I should do more of that." And it will just start working in automatic. The whole point of being consistent, like you said, when you started these practices, you yourself would meditate and be like, "Oh, that sucked. I was terrible at it." I remember going to meditation and this monk said, "I'm terrible at meditating." And I was like, "What? You're a monk?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm so bad at it. I gotta I gotta do walking meditation or I gotta count when I do it." And he was a Buddhist monk. And I was like, "Thank you. Thank you for normalizing because I'm running through my grocery list when I'm doing that." So you have to find what works for you. You have to practice it multiple times a day. And why? Because we have to get that activated nervous system, the ANS, your autonomic nervous system, down from a sympathetic dominant state, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, down into a parasympathetic state. And the more you regulate, the more you will regulate. The more you dysregulate, the more you will dysregulate because it's habits. So building habits takes time. You didn't just come out talking or walking or riding a bike. You had to do a lot of things to get to that. So, you have to be kind to yourself and but you got to move your butt and you got to do the work. I think that's the hard part for people. And that's okay. You got to be kind for yourself. But like you fall off, you get back up. You forget 3 weeks. That's okay. Just start doing it.
so wonderfully said because there's so much compassion. And we forget that by the time, if you grew up in a childhood environment that was anxiety inducing, as many of us did, especially today where there's anxiety permeating households, social media, television. It's just, it's everywhere. And even video games. When I watch people play video games, I'm like, oh, there's so much nerviness going on, so much dysregulation in some cases. We realize so up to 10, if you're 10 years old, your kiddo's 10, or in this case, listener's kiddo is 7. That's 7 years of hardwired daily 24/7 almost dysregulation.
Yeah.
How could we expect to change that in one therapy session? Let's
And
say
absolutely, right? And even those messaging, so the average person with ADHD gets, I think it's like 20,000 more negative messages before age 18 than a neurotypical kid, which I don't know who those neurotypical kids are, but but that's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of don't do this, stop this, have you thought of this? And, I think when we think about parenting and even her concern about telling her husband, he probably got a lot of negative messaging and she sees that and is afraid to tell him. And so that's where starting with the positives and also bringing, the reality of hopefulness and how interventions, to help him regulate are so helpful, but also to let him know that education today and the demands on kids today are very different than even 15 years ago with constant device usage, just an incredible amount of schoolwork, Dr. Carla Marie. Like, I can't believe how much work these kids have. And, of course, we both have doctorates. We believe in education, but I also believe in having fun. Kids need some downtime.
absolutely. And so,
Hmm.
to your point about the kids' schedules today, it goes from being in school to going to soccer practice, basketball practice, ballet
Hmm.
practice, then come home, then do your homework, then eat, then make sure you catch up with friends on social media and go through your free, and then maybe sleep with your phone in your hand or phone by your bed and then wake up
Yeah.
and you do it all over again. My goodness, it makes me feel a bit dysregulated
Yeah.
saying that. And then the other piece where you're talking about how long these patterns have been at work, if we look, let's imagine dad is 35 or dad might be 40. We don't know. But for him, bless him, his patterns have been at work for that many decades, 35 years, 45 years. So we want to give ourselves grace for whatever our chronological age is. If we're getting to a place where, let's imagine somebody's 60 and they say, oh, but can I do this? I have had these patterns for 60 years. Of course you can. Of course
You
you
can. Yeah,
can.
I've had people come to me in their 80s, trauma sufferers come to me in their 80s. Yeah.
And
I
you know
mean, what a
what's
miracle to go and seek help in your 80s. Like,
what
that
a
I'll
miracle.
never forget her for, wanting to be different.
I think of some of my older clients, and
Mm.
so no matter somebody's age, but you're right. When you see someone who hasn't given up, a woman, I'm
Yeah,
thinking of a client I had who came with a narcissistic husband, and and she finally, and then she was in the upper levels of age. I don't wanna, give anything
yeah,
away. And bless her for finally having had enough and wanting things to change. So, listeners, whether you're 15 or 85, all of this, whether you're a grandparent, a parent, and you want to create positive change, that is what Dr. Roseann and I are really talking about. That if you have a dysregulated kid, maybe you're dysregulated, maybe you're
absolutely. The same
dysregulated.
things I talk about are for
Yeah.
adults of any age, kids of any age. I say kids, but I mean, I've worked with 37-year-old kids that are developmentally 15, and what level you're at, makes, and, you know, everyone is capable of change. You just have to take the steps. And what I tried to do in all of my work, whether it's my podcast or my book, The Dysregulated Kid, or it's a blog, it doesn't matter which route you're going in, is I try to break it down and make it simple because we do get overwhelmed and we also sometimes get frustrated that things aren't, happening at all or enough. But some of the things that you have done will work once you learn to regulate your nervous system. And that to me is always like the missing ingredient in the sauce of good kinds of clinical care, or just not even clinical care, just interventions. Like when somebody says, "Oh, I tried meditating." Well, what else are you doing? Are you coming off a device for 3 hours and then trying to meditate? Like, maybe you should go for, like, a quick walk outside before you transition to that? I would have a hard time meditating if I was working and on my computer 3 hours. So, think about how you're doing things and how frequently you're doing things.
So, two things I really want to dive back into that you said. You talked about the husband or an adult also being a dysregulated kid. And I think that was so beautifully said because, especially when there's unhealed trauma,
Mhm.
and we don't mean this, listeners, in a disparaging way for you to call yourself a broken kid or a partner a broken kid or a child a broken kid. Point is, trauma makes us get stuck. We can chronologically age. We can be great businesswomen, businessmen, all of these things, but there can be that part stuck inside that is chronically on edge. And just the idea is not to shame or blame that piece, but to look at it with compassion and go, oh my goodness, I have this part of me that's stuck in this really scared, terrified place. I want to help that part of me feel better. And so, Dr. Roseann, thank you for bringing that up. It's so important. The other piece that I really like, and again, you're going back to the stepwise approach of how what works for someone else, what you might see as a hack on Instagram or Facebook or wherever in a book, it may not work for you. That doesn't mean you're broken. It just
That's right.
means, yeah, it just means you want to personalize it. For me, I can meditate to a certain degree, but I'm also much like your monk. I do better with a moving meditation. I do
Mhm.
better with a mantra in my head as I meditate. I do better doing my blessings because remember, I'm part horse because of the Sagittarius. I do better doing my blessings while I'm brushing my teeth or stretching. I do better doing these things while I'm moving. Mindful movement, not anxious movement, but mindful. So, and if you're a naturally more slower paced person, maybe you can sit and do a seated meditation for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or longer. So please don't compare yourself or your kid or your partner to somebody else. The idea is to work to find out, and it can be really helpful just to put your hand on your heart or your stomach. For me, my big place is my solar plexus, that place, listeners, where, kind of right below your rib cage. And breathe. Feel when your breath is aligned with you and kind of brings you a sense of calm. Those little micro moments, guess what? You just did it.
Yeah.
You regulated yourself. So, Dr. Roseann, I'd love to keep you here all day long. Could you give our listeners just some basic tips that they can try that will help them find tiny little ways to move
Yeah.
forward?
Yeah, and if you can visualize a cup, right? I talk a lot about a stress cup, and our cup fills up all day with different things. Maybe you're somebody who's sensitive to light, or you know, you have to deal with a difficult coworker, or you have a stressful child, right? So our cup fills up. So what are the little ways that we're going to take stress out of the cup? So is it a 4-7-8 breath, meaning breathing in for 4, holding for 7, and then exhaling for 8? Is it walking outside for 10 minutes? Is it 10 minutes of reading? What is that ritual that you're going to practice at least 3 times a day? And the reason why you need to do this multiple times a day is your nervous system needs to know what it's like. You can't just say, I'm going to be calm. It's like when you yell at a kid and you're like, calm down, and you're so mad. That's not going to cue it. That is really huge. And then if you're a parent or a partner, how can you get the people in your world to be doing this together? Because in the comms, the C is co regulate. And so one nervous system can set the tone for the room, right? If we think about, in my book, I talk this great story of the true story of how I walked. It was the first day of a job in an inner city school, and I had to go help in the kindergarten on the first day of school. And so there was a very seasoned teacher, and the kids were like maniacs, like running. There was somebody blocking the door. These were kids that like had never been in a school environment. There was a kid who was what's called an eloper. He was an autistic that would run and then forget it, leave the building, and it was very scary. And so this teacher, she just became the calm. She just was like, I'm going to become the calm. And so our body will cue into other people's and react. So let yourself be the calm to reset the people around you. You don't have to tell people you do. But what you should do is try to have people, whether you're the parent again or partner, what can you do that's small? And then really, really start to look for wins. Teach your brain to see the positives because, from a biological perspective, from leftover from caveman times, it's going to see the negative. So we have to actually train it to see the positive. And so just lean into what's working. And you may feel like, again, something didn't work before, but I'm going to challenge you. Did you do it long enough? Are you sure there weren't positive changes, or are you just annoyed like that those changes weren't happening fast enough? And just do it for 30 days. If you could practice one thing for 30 days, you have the mental capacity to journal, to put down changes that you're noticing, positive changes, you'll be surprised what's in that journal.
Thank you for these really practical tips. And I want to emphasize the piece that you were saying about how important it is to realize that these little baby steps, because our brains are wired for very good reason to notice the negative, because we need to notice the rustle in the bushes so the tiger didn't jump out and kill us.
That's
But
right.
we're generally safe. So turning our attention, turning our attention to be able to say, I am calm right now. I am peaceful right now. This feels good. And those little pats on the back, I'm a big believer when I'm working with someone and they take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. I just say, see, notice that breath you took. Notice that you felt peaceful enough to be in alignment with yourself. And I often talk about my giant schnauzer that when I give him a hug and we're in co-regulation, he goes,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I go,
I mean, co-regulation is so powerful. I mean, have you ever I'm always I have my kid was a dysregulated kid, but this is about a lot of kids and families and individuals. It's not just about my kid. But I always when he dysregulates, I say in my head, I am the wall of calm. I am the wall of calm. And, first of all, I'm Italian, Aquarian, you don't wanna piss me off. But but outside of New York City, watch out. But there's something about being the wall of calm that is so empowering, and it is contagious. As a leader in a lot of places, I can bring the room down or amplify it. And that's the power of these little things. We weren't born like this. This
Mm,
is something that happened, and regulation is built over intentional practices over time. And if you didn't have safety because of your initial environment, you can get that. You can get it. I've seen it. I saw it with 9/11. I saw it with Sandy Hook and a million other people who had trauma that was horrific. So, just be empowered by these little steps and stick with it, because I think
yes,
that's the part. But also give yourself grace again if skip a little or you forget. Just build in those reminders. Use your phone,
absolutely.
whatever you gotta do, to put timers. I always make my people set whatever practice you're gonna do, I say, I want you to set it up with the word on your phone so that it goes off 3 times a day to force you to remember. So you won't have to do that forever, you're gonna just do it all the time.
Just until it gets hardwired in, like your body knows when it wants coffee or tea or breakfast at
Yeah,
lunch. You just learn to notice that your system also wants a snack. Your system wants a snack of calmness, and it will thrive when you do that. And just one more piece, I know we have to wrap up, but when we're looking at co-regulation, because I'm such a believer in it, and I remember when I
Ah.
first learned it, I was like, "What is this?" And the therapist said, "I want you to give your partner a cow hug." And I said, "A cow hug? What's a cow hug?" And my partner was looking at me like, "What?" And so we put our hearts together. He took a deep
Mhm.
breath in and a deep breath out. I took a deep breath in, deep breath out. And to this day, we still do our cow hugs, only he's added and he can get really dysregulated, and so he now moos. So not only are we co-regulating, but he's mooing, so we get a giggle out of it.
Yes!
And
Oh, I'm
so
a big fan of joy. I have a whole
oh,
section in my book about joy.
and so
Yeah.
when we do these things,
Yeah.
but with kids, if we sit and we're in a yoga position and we do a little breath work with them and make it fun, or a partner and
Yeah.
we
Oh,
give them a
yeah.
hug, make it fun, make it
Make
joyful.
we're forgetting about joy and silliness. We're just forgetting about it. And if you use silliness as a regular strategy in your life, it's not gonna feel foreign to your partner and your family. It's just is something, and it's such a great icebreaker. I mean, I could tell you stories in the Hodge household that just would have you in hysterics. But, these are things that they're free. These are
They're
things that
free.
don't cost you anything, just being intentional about them. And I know it's not, as my dad Tony always says, it's easy with the mouth. Like, it's easy to say these things, you have to do it. So, but I do believe, again, you just need that 1% belief, and you just need a little bit of action, and then it will just be a positive snowball effect. It
My
can turn things
goodness.
around.
You have so much wisdom. Um, and I love that you have a section on joy in your book. I am a firm believer in joy. So, the dysregulated kid listeners, remember this is something that we can all benefit from because we all have a kiddo part in ourselves.
And
Thankfully,
And
thankfully.
actually, I have an action plan for adults, and then I have an action plan for adults to help a kid. So this is for everybody. And when people, buy this book, whenever you're buying it, there are incredible resources that are available to you for free. So if you're buying in advance of the date that it comes out, you can order it and you're going to get things that you can start using immediately.
Excellent.
So I want to have a regulated darn world. And I need
Oh, that
everybody to
sounds so
regulate.
good.
Yeah,
That sounds so good.
yeah.
We can do it. We can do it. No more
We could do
road
it.
rage, no more people yelling at us. No, no, no. Just blessings,
Wouldn't that
love,
be
peace.
amazing?
Wouldn't that be peace?
Wouldn't that be like, "Let me get the door for you. Oh, your kid's having a hard time. Can I give you a hand?" Like, can you imagine? Like, I mean, that comes from a place of regulation, I believe it.
You made me think of the power of noticing things right. And the other day, it was probably just last weekend, my husband and I were at the grocery store, and there was a mom with two kiddos, probably, I'd guess 9 and 14. And she was putting the cart away very carefully. And she was explaining to them, even at they weren't toddlers. She was saying, see, it's important to do this because otherwise the cart can get away and get into the parking lot and hurt somebody else's car. And I paused and she'd started walking away and I thought, wow, that was such a great teaching moment.
Mhm.
And for anyone else who happened to listen, even if they were adults. And I said, excuse me. And she turned around and she said, what? And I said, that was just such a great mothering bit you did right there. That's so, and the kids were like all smiling, like somebody noticed my mom's cool. And so when we notice, again, that
Yeah.
positive reinforcement,
Oh, yeah.
notice when you're doing something well, notice when your neighbor, a stranger, your
Yeah.
kids are doing something well. It's just let's give more kudos to ourselves
And
and the people.
kind words cost us nothing, and
Nothing.
they trickle through, it's incredible. I mean, we can go on, but one of the things that came out of Sandy Hook is, this whole kindness movement,
Mm.
and they just do such beautiful things with it, and, certainly an inspiration in a community that was hurting at such a level that would be hard to explain. So, whenever I think of when things work, having had, like, I just have very tough clinical cases. I would say that on average, most people are seeing 12 to 15 providers with a child before they came to me. So, and we could always turn things around if they believed and they were willing. So, that's the message of empowerment. The magic comes in micro. It does not come in a big thing. And that's the message we have to give to people because we're all choking, really, truly choking in overwhelm. And it doesn't have to be this way.
No, it doesn't. It could
Mm-mm.
be as simple as just ending it with this piece from my end. As simple as I am so not a believer in getting the dysregulated influence of television news that and it's something that my husband was really big on doing. So we long ago made an agreement that he can listen to it anytime he wants when I'm not in the room. He now no longer listens to it at bedtime because and it really makes a big difference because you can't expect yourself to be regulated if you're
No,
constantly immersed. So you want to look at your environment, the level of music, the amount of nature you have, the level of news, the type of news you take in. I take my news in from, either paper sources or nice regulated podcasts. So these are things we can do because especially if we have kiddos in
definitely.
the house, it's leaking through to them. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
So many things, muting somebody on Facebook. My bestie and I were always she's a big, like she's really changed her life. She had a narcissistic mother, trauma.
mm,
And, she's like, okay, I'm going to do this. Is this the right thing? And I'm like, you're setting boundaries. But such a wonderful conversation. And hopefully people feel, I know we talked about parenting, but, you know, we are raising human beings as a collective, right? And so every little thing we do adds up. And, people do struggle for a variety of reasons. And, you know, be empowered by little things making that change and also feel okay with that it doesn't have to happen fast as long as you're trending up stock market, you're
trending,
good.
trending, positive reinforcement. Notice what's going right. Pat yourself on the back. Pat, the people in your life on the back. That not only helps heal trauma, it creates new neural pathways, as the way to, but it makes us feel joyful. When we feel like we're doing a good little thing here and there, just tiny shifts, it feels good. And that's, I believe, as you do, that's what the world really needs right now. So thank you, Dr. Roseann. Where can our listeners find you and your
Yeah.
incredible work?
Well, thank you for this conversation. Well, you can get my book. You can just go to drroseanne.com. You also can search Dr. Roseann anywhere or The Dysregulated Kid, and you can find me there. But, if this resonated with you, please buy this book and also buy it for at least one other person who you think needs it. And because we need to create a community where people believe in regulation. And there's so many easy tools in this book, like to start using, but also it has a book club. There's all kinds of things that are free resources once you buy the book.
Excellent, excellent. And listeners, please don't worry. All of the links will be in the show notes. So if you're driving, if you don't have a pen, don't worry. But I will give you Dr. Roseann's spelling. Her name is Roseann. So it's Dr. Roseann. You can find her on all the socials. Her last name is Capanna-Hodge, if you want the full name. But it's Dr. Roseann, the book, The Dysregulated Kid. But remember, all the links will be in the show notes. You can access them anytime. So thank you again, Dr. Roseann. It has been a joy, a pleasure. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. It is always my joy, my privilege, and my delight. And this is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanley.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manley wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And, as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.